COVID-19 is creating a beef and pork backlog in Michigan and across the country. Pandemic or not, it's time for spring tillage, and Chris Betts returns with his weekly market update. I'm Janelle Brose, and this is Farm News 5.
Farm News 5 is brought to you by Ford.
COVID-19 is leaving no sector of the agriculture industry untouched. Beef and pork processing plants across the country are temporarily shuttering or slowing production as a result of employees testing positive for the virus. Michigan producers are seeing impacts to their bottom line as cattle and hogs meant for market back up on the farm.
When a plant shuts down, cattle that were contracted to be delivered to those plants often shift to other plants elsewhere in the country. What that creates is a backup of cattle that would normally be purchased on the cash market.
We are a finisher here at Ruggles Beef Farm, so we get Holstein cattle at about 700 pounds and raise them till about 1450, and we do a futures basis contract and lock it in when we buy those cattle at 700 pounds. And currently we're having to hold April cattle because we contract some through JBS plant in Greeley, Colorado that recently shut down due to COVID-19 getting into the workforce. And so this is disrupting the whole supply chain, where we have to hold on to cattle longer, feeding them to get bigger, and that's keeping us from buying cattle from the stocker or the backgrounder, and so they're also feeding cattle longer. As far as the futures go economically, it's hard for us to pencil out buying feeders right now with where they're at.
The pork industry, the way it's set up now, it's really set up on a just-in-time inventory system. And so that means the pigs are moving through the farms, and really when one pig outgrows its pen and moves to the next size pen, there's another pig ready to fill that pen. And so we really need to keep the whole system moving and keep the pigs going to processing. It's really disrupted the pork industry in the price that the producers are getting paid. Currently, our producers are losing $40 to $50 per animal, if not more. And so it's having a huge negative impact on our producers here in Michigan.
This is a tough time, and nobody asked for this. We understand that it's a challenge right now. I would encourage folks to be courageous and have patience as we work through this challenge. We all rely upon one another, and it's critical that we move the cattle through the system, and that's what we're going to need to do.
Quackenbush says while the supply chain is disrupted, he reminds consumers that the food chain is safe and there is plenty of protein in the system.
We've not seen it transmitted through food, but obviously in a packing plant facility where workers are in very close proximity to one another, there is a higher likelihood of it spreading from worker to worker. And so that's why we're seeing the extra precautions being taken in processing plants and all food processing plants for that matter, to ensure that workforce stays healthy and that we can continue to move product to consumers. Certainly purchase what you need, but there's no reason to panic by any means. We have an ample supply of cattle, we have an ample supply of beef, and we'll get it processed and to the stores so consumers can enjoy it.
If you want a car from a company that's been building them for 115 years, get a Ford. If you want a car with driver assist technology, get a Ford. You're going to want a Ford.
A wet fall has left several Michigan growers with tillage work ahead for spring 2020. Missy Bauer of B&M Crop Consulting gives her recommendations on spring tillage.
It's kind of a two-part. One part of it was don't forget about what we did last year to our soils. It wasn't a friendly spring, it wasn't a friendly fall, so we can't forget about 2019 even though we really want to. We got to remember we got fields that got problems, whether it's cleanup compaction issues, where we ran tillage tools wet last year, and density issues, but we have to keep that in mind. We got to start fixing some of those problems whenever we get the opportunities to be in the fields under the right conditions to fix some of those problems. And the second part was really looking at, how do I go maybe from my current tillage system and transition into over what we'd call more of a vertical tillage system. So today a lot of guys are running what we call horizontal tillage tools, either discs or field cultivators that can move the soil sideways, but really can restrict root growth potentially. Depends on your soils and your conditions and stuff like that. But if you dig up your corn plant and you see that your roots are growing down and then they start moving and going out sideways, that tells you they're being restricted by a soil density layer. So as we look at tillage options, horizontal tillage can cause that. So if we move to more of a vertical tillage format, we can alleviate that type of issue. For in a no-till environment, there's some fields that you may have that are doing really great. You know which ones are yielding better. You go out there, you look at your root system, it's going down like it should be, 35, 40 degree angle. Those fields you're probably struggling with a little more, staying wetter too long in the spring, just can't get on them when you want to. Go out there and do some digging. You might find that you are no-tilling on an old density layer. So even though maybe you've no-tilled for 10 or 15 years, if the last pass in that field was with a disc or a field cultivator, you might have an old layer in there still restricting root growth, because these layers really don't go away on their own. I think that's a concern for going into spring. Now some soils, if they got, aren't as heavy a clay, you might be able to get in and do some, pretty aggressive tillage yet this spring. Down like where I'm at in the sandier soils, that's pretty common. We can run spring tillage, primary tillage all the time. Our soils are just light enough that allows us to do that. But when your soils get really heavy, a lot of clay content to them, you may not be able to do that. So for some growers, unfortunately, it might be that we're in another situation of just dealing with the soil issues maybe that we have for another year, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But in any soils, if you think you can naturally do, spring primary tillage, that your soils dry out enough to allow you to do that you don't have too much clay content to prevent that, I wouldn't be afraid of all of getting in there and doing some of this tillage still for sure.
Control the future of your farm. Foster Swift's experienced attorneys can craft a custom succession plan for your business. Learn more at fosterswift.com.
Farm Bureau Insurance is giving back more than $5 million to its members across the state, part of the company's We're in This Together initiative. The effort will help members, first responders, and restaurants. Farm Bureau Insurance is purchasing gift cards to 1,200 restaurants as part of the effort. The gift cards will be sent to 215,000 members, which includes Farm Bureau Insurance customers, and will be used to supply 18,000 meals to first responders. And now we'd like to welcome back our resident market analyst. From Michigan Ag Commodities, here's Chris Betts.
Thanks, Janelle. Ag commodities continue to feel the weight of the coronavirus. Corn pressed to fresh contract lows this week, pressured by decimated ethanol demand. Recent OPEC production cuts will help curb the supply glut of crude, but without lifting travel bans around the world, they certainly don't go far enough. Feed demand for corn, as well as soybean meal, has also been put into question as meat processing plants are being forced to shut down because of the virus. Wheat has been lower as well, with favorable early U.S. crop conditions for winter wheat. Beneficial rain in Russia has also lent pressure, where previously thoughts were that Russia could set export restrictions. For more market information, go to mishag.com. With Michigan Agricultural Commodities, I'm Chris Betts.
For additional news and resources related to coronavirus, visit mishfb.com or michiganfarmnews.com. With Farm News 5, I'm Janelle Brose. Have a great week of farming.